Welcome back to the Nassman Hockey Podcast, and thank you for sticking with us after another lengthy pause in between episodes. With me, as always, this season, Brett Nicholas. You celebrated a birthday since the last time we spoke.
Yeah, I'm a legal drinking age now.
If I'm not mistaken, you can run for president.
I can, and look out on your ballots for 2028. That's my
2028.
announcement.
I was thinking about that recently myself, and I have a little bit while longer to go before I turn
A little bit,
35.
dude.
But
Yeah, like you're acting like I'm so much older. It's 10 months or whatever.
yeah, it's almost a year. That's a considerable amount of time. But I was thinking about that. I was like, oh, you don't really have that many more milestones. And I thought about, I was like, not that I'm going to do it, nor am I qualified to do it, but I just thought it was funny as like when people say, oh, you can finally rent a car at 25 and they make up these
Yeah.
weird milestones. Like this is kind
Well,
of it until retirement.
I have enough hubris and confidence to say I am qualified to do it. Just no one's asked me.
No one's asked you. That's it. The DNC, they didn't even ask you to be the chair
Please, Brett,
of the party, or neither party asked you. It's I was just as surprised as you are, and disappointed.
To bring this to the Islanders, I'm sure lots of people that are Islander fans get emails from the Islanders that are constantly like, please buy tickets to the game. Please buy a package, right? I get them all the time. Olivia Phillips is the one that messages me, and I responded to it. Finally, I was like fed up. And this is before the winning streak, but I was like, listen, I will buy whatever package you want if you give me a job in the front office. Get me a job in the front office. And she's ghosted me. I don't get emails anymore. So if you want the emails to stop, just tell them you want a job and it'll stop.
I'm just as surprised as you are that Lou didn't call you and just give you the keys.
First off,
But
I think I showed gumption. I showed balls because like who's gonna ask that?
Some initiative.
Yeah,
But he's been busy and so is the team since the last time that we spoke.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I looked it up before we hit record, and we last spoke on January 8th, and that was just after the Islanders beat the Bruins in overtime 5-4. So they've lost 2 games since then, 3 games counting against the Panthers on Sunday night of this week on the 2nd.
Yeah.
So it's been a little bit of a run. We were quite down. And we joked last week as we were trying to figure out when we were going to record, and he said, "Oh, we're going to be celebrating a winning streak." And I said, "Don't get ahead of yourself." But it felt good. We're not there yet, but we're there. We're showing signs of life, and
it was really fun to watch these last 7 games or even 8. Like it's been a nice little streak. It's made it obviously when your team wins, it's always more fun. But they also like flipped a switch to playing good hockey. So that made it fun too.
It wasn't always exciting. I'll say that.
Yeah.
Like most recently, that Flyers game wasn't great, but you take, was it 3-0 win? You take that all day. It gets Sorokin the shutout. It looked good. It wasn't the most exciting game. If it wasn't for it happening last week, you just probably forget about it. And most of the specifics of other than maybe the Sibikov fight. But all that being said, it's the team has continued to pile up injuries. So I wanted to set the stage with the last time we spoke was then, and they've only lost a certain amount of games, and that's kind of despite all these injuries piling up. And we have Varlamov, Hogberg, Dobson, Fashing, who's I believe on a conditioning stint now in Bridgeport.
He is. Yeah.
Mayfield, Pulak, Riley, who we've known for a long time, and Barzell, who's now out again, and this time indefinitely. So we'll get to that in a second. I want to end there before we go into some of the other things. But Varlamov also has been out. It doesn't seem like he's coming back anytime soon. Skarek had his NHL debut against the Florida Panthers, 4th string goalie, one way or another, came up from Bridgeport, was I believe between Worcester and Bridgeport for some time too.
Yeah, he's been flopping back and forth. He hasn't had good stats really anywhere.
Yeah, so it's not as if he's like blowing it out of the water anywhere and kind of sniffing for that spot. Hogberg kind of came out of nowhere,
Hmm.
and I thought has been playing fantastic, and that was a bright spot on this where you're like, okay, is there eventually there's going to be a life after Varlamov, and you always get it in these weird ways, and he stepped up and he's been great on that winning streak. Um, and then it was half the decor is out.
Yeah.
Um,
Um,
so yeah, just I want to start there and just kind of let's get our bearings and get our thoughts together on what those implications are, and then again ending with Barzell.
yeah, I think to a lot of fans, this winning streak does have some implications on maybe how you look at the team. But going back to our last episode of the podcast, we talked about not we like danced around it about like, oh, who should we trade? What are they worth? Right? We said we didn't want to talk about who it was, because we were like, this team needs to rebuild. Let's talk. Like that's it. Like they need
Well,
to
it had been
rebuild.
going on so long at that point, right?
Yeah,
Like the season was, it was game. Islanders Anxieties talked about this, and we made the same comment. Like we're 3.5 years into the same thing. Like it's over. Like
yeah.
we got to move on.
So that little streak that they started to do, which like to me it was the first episode of the season that we did. I had mentioned that the Islanders need to go regress to the mean because they were like performing below average of what they normally do, and needed to like hit that back, and they started to do that. Their defense, they've let up the 12th most, or the 12th fewest goals in the league. They're right there, like they're towards the top of the league in goals against. So that team defense was there. It's just they couldn't score. So when the puck started to go in a little bit more, they started to win those games. And then I started to think like, this is a win streak. Lou is not going to sell. Like at this point, that win streak's going on. I felt there's no way Lou's going to sell. I don't think he's going to add. I think he's just going to stand pat and see what his guys can do. Um, and that left me to the point where, as an Islander fan, I think he had two options. I firmly believe this team needs a rebuild, but you can either sit and whine about them not rebuilding, which was no fun for anyone, or you can just enjoy the win. So that's what I started doing. I was watching the games. Hey, they're winning. Let's go. It's fun. I don't think this team's going to win the cup, but let's have some fun. But now a third wrinkle into it is the injuries continue to pile up. And I hope the team wins, but I still think at this point you got to sell. I don't think we have the horses anymore to even. I know they've been winning with an injured list, but with them keep piling up, do you think they have the horses to pull off this comeback where they have to jump a bunch of spots? They did already, and now they are in the picture. Like, so it's hard to tell. But at the same time, now they're so injured that I don't know how you can think this team can do it.
It's interesting. So you say that was kind of the question that I was going to ask as well, is say, is this a little bit of false hope? And not to say that they don't stay and hang around the wild card, right? But ninth place is just as good as 14th, right? If
Hmm.
is it doesn't, to me, I don't know what the real difference is. I think it makes, maybe it's a little more exciting down the stretch. They're in it, they're not in it. And maybe with a week or two to go, they're finally, the math just doesn't work, and they're in 10th place and they lose the wrong games and so on and so forth. Um,
Hmm.
I can get excited about that. I can get even behind it. I mean, we've seen these seasons that have come down to the wire. The, 06, 07, just because we were in high school, like formative years, the Wade Dublowitz poke
Yeah,
check game, and as Michael Leboff always says, like the mercenary squad, and that's kind of what this feels like, right?
yeah.
It just out of nowhere, just these new players, and from within the organization, Mark Gatcombe, who I really liked. Um, he's kind of, the Islanders seem to have this never-ending group of Casey Cizikas Juniors, where it was like Bardreau and now Gatcombe, and it was I don't even remember how to say his name, Arbendow, whatever his name was. Um, you know what I'm saying?
Durando,
Durandal, whatever his name was.
the
Um,
French man. Come on,
yeah, like
Arnaud
McLean.
Durando.
Oh yeah, just yeah, rolls right at the tongue. Kyle McLean, and there's been kind of been this really great kind of fourth line guys that just keep kind of coming up, and he hasn't really. He did get his first NHL goal, and the guys almost didn't grab the puck. If I'm not remembering, if I
I
remember
saw that.
correctly.
That was so weird.
But like they've had these players, and they have. Oh, Fashing was another one where they like show flashes. I think Gatcombe's probably the youngest out of them, I believe, but kind of comes in and they can't really fill that bottom six that Sipelkov's playing on the fourth line at times. That Peugeot, Zizekas, Holmstrom line works here and there. It's really not anything super special. So you kind of have this top half of the lineup that just is, with Barzell now out again. Now you've got to think about what you're doing. Lee keeps scoring goals. I, I'm not really sure what you do here with Barzell. If he's out indefinitely, he's going on LTIR. Varlamov can then move to LTIR. I don't know that this means like Barzell eventually comes back for the playoffs, right? I don't think they can Vegas this. It really depends on the injury. So putting that aside for a second and just concentrating on, all right, if he's going to make moves, like if the move is keep Nelson and keep Lee and sell Pajot and maybe even keep Palmieri and thinking long term, like, okay, maybe push them down the lineup. James and I used to talk about that all the time. Is the problem with the Islanders is no one's in the right spot in the lineup. Everyone's
Yep.
pushed just too high in the lineup to really work. And now you're in a position where you're putting extra pressure on them. They've met the expectation, and the bottom six is not contributing. Save for Holmstrom, all of a sudden has 3 goals in 2 games, and
Yeah.
this and that. But no one else is really contributing. So you're kind of. It's interesting. This is a really long way of answering this question. If they're going to go for it a little bit here and say we're really close, we've seen what some of these other teams can do with adding just even around the edges. Detroit, right? I don't think they have anyone super special, but they're figuring it out. We
Yeah.
have better goaltending than them. We have better, I think, top end talent all around. With a lot, that's a lot of money if Lou decides to move these players to LTIR. I forget what
Well,
Barzell's making this season. You can add. I don't know that you have the assets. I don't really know what the asking prices are out there, but if you really wanted to add and keep Nelson, and like I said, maybe you move Peugeot and figure some shit out, one way or another, you free up some more space and add, and then you have 3 players worth of space that maybe you can bring into the lineup. Re-sign Nelson. I'm not really scared about that. Cap's going to go up so much. Sign him to a three by 4.5.
I was waiting. I was waiting for like a gap in the conversation. Like I was letting you make your point because everything you're saying about who can we add and stuff like that, the cap, you mentioning it, it's going up so much in the next 3 years that like I almost think you should trade Nelson still, get a lot of like get the draft capital, get whatever you need, use that draft capital. This is now the time where you can build a team by trading and buying because you now have the space. But every team has it, so you have to compete with everyone. It's not just the Islanders that all of a sudden have $10 million in cap space going into the season. It's
Right, but
everyone.
my
But
point about keeping Nelson is you need to replace him. You don't have a 2C anywhere close to being ready, so you need to go buy it anyway. Why? Like, if you need to replace him with somebody that's, I guess, younger, but he's not getting worse. Like, this is the first season where he's not
well, that's
really
why I'm
lived up
saying
to it, and maybe you're selling low on him, which sucks because you could have sold him last year if that was the case. If you were
he's
going to sell him
still
now, you could have sold him last year and said, okay, not only you're not, it's not even a rental. You have him for a year and a half,
there's
and
no center though available in the NHL that's better than him.
that's what I mean. Why are you trading him?
What?
I question other than
Why?
getting the
Because
assets,
you're
but
not
you
making the playoffs. Get the assets, and you know what? Throw a competitive offer at him. Um, his kids grew up on Long Island right now. They're very young, but like he's made a family on Long Island. Why not sell get assets back for him, and then I don't think he would come back because that usually doesn't work. But throw
No.
an offer at him if he takes it. Otherwise, you have probably a first round pick for him and a younger player. Why don't you could package that and get another good available center in the offseason, and you could try to build that way. I don't know. I think we've seen this core cannot do it. Um, and this is not the conversation I wanted to take the thing today because I don't want to just talk about let's blow it up because I don't think that's happening. But I still believe this core can't do it together, and you have to make some kind of big move. You see other teams. This actually is kind of I was going to ask you about this. So you see these other teams make huge moves. Mikko Rantanen, top 5 player in the NHL, was just traded because the Avs were like, I don't think it's going to work. The deal, we're not going to be able to make a deal. Let's get Natchez. Let's do something big. I would love the Islanders to do something big. We needed to do something big when we were making the Eastern Conference Finals and losing. If we did something big, maybe we would have added and would have had that final push. But the Islanders never, ever, ever go out and do that big thing. So let's maybe our big thing starts with Nelson. So like we could start revamping our team. You can't just sit there and hope that year 8 is the one that's going to work.
Yeah, and I feel like we've almost flipped a little bit.
I know what the hell just happened. This is some Jedi mind trick just happened.
So I think maybe Nelson is the exception, right? Maybe it's Palmieri, it's Pajot, and maybe even Lee. But even just keeping 2 of them and letting go of Palms and Pajot, it opens up considerable space, and it still leaves you with 2 players that are still more than serviceable, right? Like I understand that getting the assets back, but eventually you need to replace them. And they're not the problem. Lee, I have issues with the leadership part of it. Well, when it wasn't a winning streak, and for the last 2 or 3 years,
Mhm.
something was. I don't really care if it's Patrick Waugh or whoever was behind the bench. There's a certain amount of accountability and responsibility that he had that I'm surprised he's still the captain. I'm surprised Bo Horvat didn't come in this season
Yeah.
as the captain and just because there was something really wrong there. I worry about again. There's no one as good on the market. I don't even know about free agency. I have not paid that close attention, but I don't think. I mean, we said that about Horvat comes in, they re-sign him, and Lemrell has kind of swung for the fences here and there. It's not like he hasn't brought players in. I think that was a misconception for a long time. I understand your point to not to give the Rangers any credit, but they did something a few years ago where they were in this kind of position, right? I think they were in like 10th place and they said, we're close and I guess we can make a run of it. This would be similar to last year's Islanders too, right? They make a run of it around this time and start getting in the mix and I don't know, then flame out in the
Yeah.
first round. I mean, unless you're the owners, you don't care about 3 extra games at UBS, right? It
Yeah.
doesn't mean a whole lot if you're just kind of staying stagnant. So I'm not sure.
Yeah. And you can never compare to the Rangers because we're not the Rangers. We just don't
Oh,
have
in a
the
lot of
Rangers will
ways.
always be able to. Yeah. Yeah. But the Rangers will always be a team that can get a free agent, which we do have to work harder to get free agents. Like,
Oh, I'm
that's
that.
always going to be an
Yeah,
issue.
I think that's a given. But yeah, I think knowing that is another reason to keep Nelson because it's like
Yeah.
you already have
Okay.
the guy. I mean, like we don't need to we're like kind of waxing on that, but like
Yeah.
I think I'm of the mind of just kind of he's the guy. Get rid of anybody else. He's not the problem, even if he's not. He can bring back the most assets.
So,
I'm not
um,
really sure. I know. I don't know if it's false hope or not.
before we jump into like maybe talking about our new players that we recently got, because I know we're going to talk about them, but and since we're talking about roster construction and next year possibly and stuff like that, um, you know, this is a big year for Dobson, right? He's an RFA. Everyone's expecting a big contract for him. He's been injured now. He hasn't had the best season, so I think his stock is going down. He's probably cost himself a lot of money, but at the same time, we have another defenseman RFA, Romanov. I think their script's almost flipped. Like, Romanov's amazing. I love this guy. He's not an offensive powerhouse, but he hits like a truck. He plays solid defense. He eats a lot of big minutes, and occasionally he'll chip in a goal or two. I don't know. I just think it's an interesting dynamic. I wonder what's going to happen this offseason with Romanov, who I think has earned his money, and Dobson, who has not.
This ain't the little itty bitty teeny tiny bowl. This is the Super Bowl. Get in on the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of Super Bowl 49. Scoring touchdowns is key to hoisting the Vince Lombardi Trophy, and you have a shot to score big by betting on them at DraftKings Sportsbook, the #1 place to bet touchdowns. New DraftKings customers can bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPENY or text HOPENY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 and over. Age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in New Hampshire, Oregon, and Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/ftball. NFL Plus Premium offer available only to new and former NFL Plus subscribers. Additional NFL Plus Premium terms at nfl.com/terms.
Yeah, the Dobson situation I think is interesting because he and with Romanov, as you were saying, I think it's almost a wash. So like at the end of the day, that their contracts may just be like have shifted closer together or something like that. I'm not really sure what Dobson was expecting. I can't. What is Dobson making this year?
Oh, I don't have it up. Let me see.
He's making $4 million this year, so maybe if he was due for a raise, which after last season he was, but after this one, I don't know what that number could be. And that number's really been set. Like Barzal makes 9.15, Sorokin's 8, and he's nowhere near that as far as a contributor. Even though after one 70-point season or 71 points or whatever he had,
Yeah.
he's that kind of that upper end has been set by Lamoriello. So he wasn't going to make, what was he going to make, 7 by 8 at best?
Yeah.
So now he might be at 6. Romanov may also be in that, I don't know about that neighborhood in particular. He's making 2.5. So he was due for a raise. So he may get a 5 by something, at the end of it. So together as a pair, I think it really depends on what how much of a raise Dobson played himself out of. Maybe they're making 10 million as a pair. They make 6 and 4. I'm not really sure what Dobson was due for at the end of that.
Yeah.
So that is very interesting. I didn't think about that, or I haven't been thinking about that, just because he's just been playing bad, and I wondered what was going to happen, but it was like
it seems like
off.
they've flip flopped. You usually don't pay defensemen like Romanov who don't contribute offensively all that much.
But on this team, like he's as much of an identity piece as there has been in a few years.
Yeah, definitely.
Like you just like haven't had that. He's the only grit in the lineup.
Mm-hmm.
So it's Cizikas is obviously there. Gatcom's kind of throwing some stuff in there, but Matt Martin hasn't played in some time, which I think is for the better.
Yeah.
But so there's really Mayfield. He's just a big dude. He's not really throwing his body around. He's not really providing that presence like he used to. Pelech doesn't really do that much anymore. So Romanov kind of stepping up in the way that he has and really, making them a little harder to play against. I hate to use a cliche, but I think that's what he's doing. But it's seeing those big hits. It's a little bit of a throwback, which is great. And it's nice that it's happening to other teams from the Islanders instead of the other way around, where they're just getting trucked. Which even with Martin and Cizikas for so long and Clutterbuck, it still felt like there were times when they would get pushed around, like they were just a smaller team. So he has a little bit of an outsized impact, I think,
Yeah.
on that. And unfortunately, it's just one guy, but um, yeah, I agree. He stepped up in a huge way this season.
Yeah, I'm just enjoying his play.
Um, it's an interesting thing, just because we're talking about the D. Um,
Yeah.
Scott Peronovich gets brought in from St. Louis. Someone you never heard before. High pick. I think a second round pick in St. Louis. And then also mistaken. I believe that was what his history
Yeah.
was.
Yeah, he has a high draft pedigree. Um, he's a smaller guy who has some injury issues. He actually reminds me a lot of Hickey. Not I would say play style, just like the profile, right? Like a smaller guy, early draft pick, didn't really stick around with his team that drafted him. But then he could go on and have a decent career. Like I liked Hickey when he was here. I'm hoping that's what we get out of Perunovic.
So it's really interesting you say that, because that's exactly what I thought.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, another organization's high draft pick that, again, didn't, like you said, didn't stick around. I'm like, maybe he can be that guy. And Hickey really ultimately, I believe he got hurt, and then Devin Taves stepped in, and that was the end of it. He just lost his
Yeah.
spot in the lineup by really no fault of his own, and then never was able to kind of get back in the lineup and get that get his swagger back, because he was good for a long time. I don't think he was um he wasn't a top pairing defenseman. I think he was ever going to be that, but he made a difference out there. I remember some really big hits in maybe one of those Tampa Bay Florida series back in the day. So I agree. It was interesting that you said that. That's kind of what I was thinking. I just kind of saw, like, small stature guy that maybe he can just kind of find his way with the Islanders, and it was really no risk, right? 1.1 and change. He's an RFA after this season, so
Yeah.
if you like him, you can keep him. If not, another team can
Exactly.
kind of take a flyer on him.
Yeah. It's a low risk, medium reward play. Like I don't think he's ever going to be like some like huge needle mover, but you could have a solid defenseman for a little while if it pans out. And I think that's a smart pickup by Lou.
Yeah, and along those lines, and this again, this Perunovic, not so much, but Adam Boquist that was definitely a Garth Snow-esque move. You haven't really seen Lou take advantage of the waivers, so this was a little bit of a nostalgic thing for Islander fans of that
Yeah.
era. Um, but I think a really good one from a team that has some pedigree, and he's, I believe, won the cup with them last year. What do you think of this signing, or this pickup rather, on the waiver wire?
Again, it was another one. I was like, awesome. Just like take a shot at it when you have the room for it. We have such an injured decor. You need bodies. Um, our team is kind of in a state of flux right now. Like just see what you could get and what works out. Um, if anything, if you don't love him, but he performs admirably for your team, you could flip him at the trade deadline and get some assets back. So like there's no risk to picking him up. I know he hasn't performed. A lot of Panthers fans said he sucked and like they hated him. So like whatever. If he sucks for us, he sucks for us. It's just another like with all our injuries, it's an NHL body to throw out there and see what happens.
Yeah, he's young. He was on a 1-year deal. Is a prove it season, and he didn't with Florida. And whether or not, I didn't read anything that to the effect of, I didn't see what you read, but I didn't see anything else saying like, oh, they wish that they could
Yeah.
have kept him in the organization, kind of thing, either, right?
And I
Um,
didn't read it. I was reading Reddit comments, So I'm just reading some people like me, just like some jerks sitting on the internet commenting.
yeah. So I mean, also an RFA, like you said, it's possible that um, that he's flipped at the deadline, but or just to get him off the books, I guess that's fine. But playing against him, and I guess just hearing that name, I don't really have anything. Nothing comes to mind. Actually, if memory Sirs, he was kind of good against when they played the Islanders, and he's kind of been in the same. He was with Columbus for a while, so we saw a decent bit of him in the Metro. Um, but with Florida last season, I didn't hear anything particularly bad. So he didn't win a cup with them because he was with Columbus last year. So I misspoke. I didn't realize how he seemed so natural on that team. That name association, when I saw that, it kind of made sense. But yeah, I mean, there's a little offensive upside with him, so it was a good grab by Lamoriello. I wish it would have been to replace Riley instead of bolster the back end. But he needed to do something, and it was available. It's interesting he dropped quite that far. I can't remember where the Islanders were. This was really recent and on the winning streak, so they were kind of in the middle of the Eastern Conference there. I'm not really sure about where they were in the league or in the waiver wire order.
They were like 20. Sorry, yeah, they were like 20th in the league. So he dropped like 10 to 12 places.
That's still considerable. I guess it means that the teams, Anaheim's not going to pick them up. These other teams that are below them in the standings weren't necessarily interested. They don't really have a reason to bring in a player like that. So that kind of makes sense. But glad he's a very hockey player size, 6 foot, 190 pounds, according to Puckpedia. So nothing to write home about. Didn't really add size to the back end, much like Brunovich, and so on the smaller side ish of things. What have you seen from him so far? He's he scored against the Lightning.
Scored in his first game,
in his first game, and then played against his old team the following night. But what'd you see from him?
I think I don't have a ton to say on exact. I think he's just fitting in. He's a player that's stepping in, and he scored a goal. We need contribution from the defense, so you have to give him props for that. I didn't get to watch the game against the Panthers, so I was telling you, my wife's been away, so I've been managing 2 kids by myself. Couldn't really sit down and watch the game, so I didn't really see what went on there. I don't know. I don't even know how Skarek looked because I hadn't been able to look it up, so I didn't get to see how the defense looked.
He was left out to dry.
He was okay, so maybe Brunovich isn't that good.
Islanders kind of come in the second period and make a game of it, but they were down. They was down 4-3 pretty late into the third, and then Panthers kind of just do what they do, and they're a good team, defending Stanley Cup champions. So, if there was ever a schedule loss, it was that.
Oh, that was
second half of back to back. After they've been playing a lot of hockey lately, not a lot of days off. So first 2 games on the road in quite some time, and even before that, they haven't really left the area since around Christmas time. So they haven't gone very far anyway.
Yeah,
outside of Ottawa or something. So they've been kind of making hay while they can. We were saying before we hit record, those 2 games were probably their toughest in some time.
A big stretch.
In a big stretch, and they still won the game. So you still have to win the games you're supposed to win. And you won one no one expected you to win.
Yeah,
and
there's a couple. Okay. I think. Yeah, they beat the Avs. They beat the Golden Knights. They beat the Hurricanes. They had some big wins in that stretch. As a matter of fact,
Blue Jackets are ahead of them. I don't think it's any. At the time the Flyers were. I don't remember by the second game. I think the Islanders had a better points percentage, but nothing. That's not how the standings work typically. But they won the games. There was a lot of teams in front of them, and then some pretty good ones.
Yeah. So there's one addition. There's an elephant in the room, maybe that we haven't touched on for D.
Yeah, Tony DeAngelo.
What do you think? Is he a good fit? Put away anything else. Is he a good fit?
Oh, play wise, I mean, they needed an upgrade from Cholowski.
Yeah.
Watching Cholowski was maddening. Just having him screw up. Forget about in the offensive zone on the power play and not being able to kind of generate anything from the back end. He couldn't even make the simple passes to get Barzell or whoever wound up to go in the zone. He's like fumble. I forget what game it was. And maybe it was 1 or 2 games before they picked up D'Angelo. And I'm watching and it was like, you can't even make a drop pass. Looking at the guy, like tape to tape. Like you are in the NHL. There's no pressure. Just make the pass. And he just couldn't do it. And I was like, this is a nightmare.
So hockey-wise, like the knock on D'Angelo has always been he's fine offensively. He's just defensive. He's poor on the defensive end of it. The Islanders have been playing a good team defense, so maybe we could cover up for that. I think the puck movement ability he brings is something that's sorely needed. And honestly, if you want to even look in, like, I think the biggest concern is the locker room cancer thing because he has not been good in locker rooms. So that's always been an issue.
That must have been one of those things, and I imagined that was definitely a concern.
They had a talk. Yeah.
I imagine Lamorel was like,
he did his
come
due
back
diligence.
to the NHL? I imagine like if there was ever a last shot for you, I'm gonna give it to you, but you will disappear.
Yeah.
Like you thought you disappeared before. You're gonna come here and you're gonna be straight as an arrow. This is literally your last shot to make it make a name for yourself in a positive way.
And like his politics aside, his politics,
that's most hockey players, by the way.
I was gonna say, like, if you're gonna hate a guy for his politics, you got to stop watching the NHL. It's really separate the art from the artist type situation here.
Which is we could talk about that
offline.
Yeah.
No, I'm just saying, like, that's what it is. You can't enjoy hockey if you're gonna worry about politics, like, to that extreme of an extent. So, I'm enjoying him on the Islanders right now. I didn't think I'd like it, but I do. So here we are.
I didn't make any judgments at the time, even just kind of chatting with friends and even Ranger fans and stuff. I wanted to see what was going to happen with it. My take on it right now is I haven't really noticed him, and I think that's fine. Like one way or another, he's kind of just moving the puck, and
I mean,
they call his name out.
He's made some nice passes, and he had the overtime winner against the Lightning.
Yeah, well, I would say that stuff's good. He's making some good passes. He scores the goal, but I think for the most part, he's just kind of guy, and that's what he needs for himself. He just needs to be guy. He doesn't need the extra attention unless it's good little things that you're just supposed to do as a professional hockey player and a defenseman on it and in the NHL. And he's not taking any stupid penalties. He's just kind of no huge mistakes, nothing to write home about. And I think for anybody that's just trying to get back in the league, that's all you can ask for, right? Especially with the reputation that he had. So I think he's doing. He seems to be focused, and like I said, you're playing for a team in the New York Islanders and for a president and general manager in Lamorel that even if they don't have an identity on the ice, there's definitely a way to conduct yourself as a person, and hopefully he's got that memo. Although I'll say this with the locker room cancer part, if there was ever a team that needed somebody to come in and just be a complete asshole, for a minute, if they had still been losing, it was the New York Islanders to just like cause some chaos and be like, what, I came back for this shit.
Bring them all together.
Yeah, like not even common enemy, just be like, I think what we talked about in the last episode is like there was no, and I, anxiety, I talked about this at the time. It was like toxic positivity. It was like, why on the players after these losses that they played like absolute shit coming out and saying that it was fine. And we're like, no, dude, like this is game 200 of the same stuff.
Yeah.
This isn't fine. So it's interesting that he came in the middle of this win streak. That may have also helped him just get acclimated and start contributing kind of right away and not really making any mistakes. It would have been interesting a month ago had they done the same thing and they were losing. Perhaps this doesn't go as smoothly. And he may just be looking to get into the league and make a good name for himself for a month, and maybe the Islanders trade him. Depends on what the situation is. It's everything's on the table. I don't enjoy the no news situation and not being able to have like any idea what's happening, because normally with a good team they lose a guy
Yeah.
like Barzell or half their decor, and they start making moves. They're like, okay, we're
Yeah.
in it and we're going for it, so
I think you
we're
just
getting
got to see
ranted
what
in.
you got. You got to see what you got with these fringe players.
Yeah, so and it's interesting because, like you said, it wasn't really the defense that was having the issues. It was the special teams and it was lack of scoring.
It was the
And
special teams, but we have to
it's been
say
better.
that not really the power play, but the penalty kill was the best in the NHL for January. So we were 93% in January. The funny thing is it didn't move the needle at all in terms of placement in the league. We're still 32nd in the league. We're like tied for it. But the penalty kill finally stepped up and started playing well.
Yes, and so that was, I think, a big part of the winning streak and just winning more of your games and losing them in January. Um, definitely, definitely important there. But like where they needed the players to get like the injection, what my point was going to be, not it didn't need to be on defense. So it kind of sucks because it
Yeah.
seemed like Mayfield wasn't making huge mistakes like in that stretch
No.
like for a minute. So like the D was okay. Like the group was not ideal but fine. It was the bottom six not really contributing anything when the top six was injured, other than Anders Lee and Nelson for a minute. Everyone else kind of went cold, and you needed this kind of injection. And what, Gatcomb was the only addition, right? Sipakov kind of cooled off. He hasn't been the same since the beginning of the season. I think growing pains, and that's fine. Still would like him around. He's, I think, a good third line player. Holmstrom was a ghost for a while. Pajot hasn't, contributed anything. So it's interesting that they're having to get all these kind of mercenaries on the back end when not wishing anybody any injuries, but it's the offense that really could have just used like, who do we got? Like bring in some players and just get some things shifted on the front end.
Yeah, dude, I think it's harder to pick up those guys on the front. There's
Oh,
so many 7th D floating around there that like one of them will work, but there's not so many 13 forwards that are good. All 13 forwards are generally not very good.
I think that's right. I'm just talking about like I don't think Peronovich is particularly like wow or but just like
No,
someone different, like literally just having different players in the lineup. And I think, again, for better or for worse, I don't really want anyone to be injured, but it's kind of nice to just have different players around and to see what they, not just to see what they can do, but the makeup of the team like is something, someone's just bringing something different to the table. And I don't want to circle all the way back to the beginning of our conversation about who to trade and kind of going against the grain on my original argument, but Nelson, like, okay, maybe it is time to do that and just get different players. I think that's, if you're gonna lose, at least give it a shot like that and try to
yeah,
get a different feel on the roster and figure out what your identity is again. And you have a coach that's dedicated, that wants to see it through, and who knows about the general manager. So it's been interesting to at least have some different players back there providing a different perspective. And winning some hockey games. The top six really showed up. Sorokin and Hogberg showed up and really pushed the team through. I hope Scarra can find his way here if when called upon.
hopefully we only see him for one more game. They have one more back-to-back before the long break, and I'm hoping that Hogberg or someone is back before, so he could not have to be relied on.
Yeah, the lack of news is is tough. So you're just kind of dealing with, we might not see anybody, until next year.
Yeah.
Or they could come back for the playoffs if it gets to that point. But so we're kind of getting to the winning streak, and we can kind of dive into some of those games and what you're seeing or what you saw. And I know we have a little bit of a hard stop, so I don't want to go on too much longer, but I do want to talk about the winning streak as the one positive from the last couple of years here.
Yeah. So they ended up going, they were 7-3, and then they won against the Lightning. So I think I put them at like 8-2 or say in their last 10. But when they were at 7-3, I was like, okay, that's 700 hockey. That's really good hockey. If you're winning 7 of 3, you're a good team. They need to play at that 7-3 pace for the rest of the season to make it, or not to. They would have 98 points. I think that would comfortably put them in. So that's what I started thinking of with the streak. The team, but it really felt like the team flipped a switch, which is annoying because it felt like the team was playing bad, and then all of a sudden one day, it wasn't like a slow, gradual change to good hockey. They were just like, oh, let's play good. How about that?
And that was, I think, what was annoying the whole time is like,
it's what's been annoying all season because we know what they can do.
Yes, and I think that's like they turn it on for stretches and seemingly turn it off or keep it off and and turn it on like, all right, we're just gonna make the playoffs or we're just gonna do this and we're and that's not the goal isn't to just make the playoffs, right? They had no chance the last 2 years against Carolina. There was no way. Now, some of them were closer than not, right? But
I'm just saying, like, I mean, the streak has done some nice things for them and putting them back in the picture, but there's so many teams you have to jump. You have to keep you have to keep winning. So now we've lost a game. I was interested to see how they would answer to a loss because they're bound to happen. You're not winning out the rest of the season, right? But unfortunately, like they're super injured, so I don't even know how you're like supposed to judge them now going against kind of like a little bit of a murderer's row for their next 3 games. You got the Knights, the Jets, and the Wild. Like those are 3 top tier teams. I know we've beat the Knights once already, but I don't know. They need to keep winning. So that's what my thoughts were with the streak. They're not going to sell anymore. They're not going to sell, so they need to. I don't want them to add. They just need to prove that they can do it with what they have. I don't know. So just keep winning. That's how I felt about the streak. They just need to do more.
I think you hope that there's a long enough break from the 9th to the 22nd. Luckily they come back on the 23rd and they're playing at home, and they don't really leave the area for some time, and they go out on the West Coast at the beginning of March. They don't really play anybody around them, so like they're playing Boston and the Rangers, but other than that, it's all West Coast. So there's a certain point where if they lose the games, at least they're not losing points to teams around them.
Yeah.
But you still need to keep up with what's going on. And I believe the Islanders have one of the tougher schedules.
They do
in March. So they got hot at the right time. If there was ever hope that they can continue this and quote steal some points here and there and get some momentum and feel good about themselves. Again, you go and get a point against the Jets, beat the Kaprizov-less Wild, and maybe even win against the Stars. That's some good momentum. Like you're really proving that you can do it.
That's a lot of good teams though to get points against, even with some potential injuries and stuff.
And doing it without Barzal is you're putting a lot more pressure on players that have not lived up to it this season.
Well, and that
other than Lee. And Horvat's been very good. Just I don't think scoring as much as even he would like.
So the Islanders have had some bad injury luck, and but is it really luck, or is it that they constantly are putting themselves in these holes where everything matters so much, so you have to have Barzal out there blocking a shot that he should be blocking maybe, and like because you desperately need to win all your games now. And I think that's why they keep on getting injured. And I just like now we're gonna put more play, like you said, like now that it has to fall on other players. And are they gonna overextend themselves and start getting hurt? Because that seems like it's what's happening. And
It's an
again, it's just
interesting
why
point.
it's just why you can't do what they do in the beginning of the seasons.
Yeah, they fell behind in the season like they did every game. Like each game was a microcosm of how the season was going. And they kind of, like you said, they flipped a switch a little bit and just kind of decided
Yeah, they
to
just became a
not
good
do it
hockey
anymore
team.
and be, yeah, they were just focused. And I think good teams just figure that out. I'm not really sure, even with injuries, the guy like Barzell, I'm not sure how the Wild are doing without Kaprizov, but good teams figure it out, and Duclair has been okay. You
The Wild are
can't,
4-6 in their last 10, so like they're kind of like in a slump.
yeah. So that's not good, and if you're a good team and you think you're actually that good, and even without a guy like that, and Barzell hasn't. It really depends on how you view how Barzell's played this season. They're definitely worse without him, and he definitely contributes. And we've had this conversation before. James and I used to argue about this. I don't think he's elite. I think he's really good. The problem with Barzell being out right now, despite what you think of him as an actual player, is it's Horvat and Lee scoring goals. Like that's it. There's really not a lot of help around the edges there.
Yeah.
So Palmieri finally scored a goal after a considerable
while
amount of
here.
time recently.
Well,
Lee's been really consistent, but it's not there's, like I said, Duclair is really not contributing. He's getting a goal. He's every once in a while, but as a top 6 guy, they're just not. As a group, they've been better on the streak, but
our top line was supposed to be Duclair, Horvat, and Barzal, though, and they've only played 5 games together. So,
well, the chemistry, I think they tried it when they came back together, or I think other things had been clicking. So by that point, it was just not worth recreating it for no, breaking things up just to see what was going to work. Sipakov was also contributing at that point, so it was a little bit different of a look in that department. And now you don't have that because hasn't been scoring.
Yeah. So I got some late breaking news. Kind of circle back on some conversation earlier, but Staple just put out a Lamoriello quote, so I think we should touch on it. Lamoriello said, "You talk to other people around the league who have called on Peugeot, Nelson, Palmieri, and maybe other guys, and the only thing those executives are hearing is, I want to sign Brock Nelson. I'm not interested in hearing what your offer is." So that should let Islander fans know where we stand. Don't even think about trading him. He's staying. He's not going before the season ends. They're trying to re-sign him.
Yeah, and I think, like I said in the top of the show, I think that's the right move personally. Move on from whoever else you want to move on from. I don't know that I'd put him in the untouchable category. I would hate to learn what some of those offers were going to be. But you still need to replace him.
And you don't need to replace him this year. I think you got to get rid of him, but he's not. So seems like a moot point at this time.
Yeah. I think ultimately that's good with the cap going up. I think you keep a guy like that. You're going to get guys off your books this summer, one way or another. Kind of figure it out as you go, and it doesn't mean you still can't move some of those other guys. The other guy, which I was surprised, I think what I saw was that there's a lot of interest for Peugeot, and that's a guy I super don't mind them getting rid of as much as I like him, and he was a good, like a critical piece at that time.
He kills penalties, and he's our best centerman. He's best, not centerman, best face-off taker.
Yeah, but I mean, Nelson's still really good.
No, I know.
Still
No,
really
I'm just saying,
good.
but teams always want a face-off specialty guy and a penalty killer for the playoffs. They always do.
Yeah, and he has another year left at 5. So
Yeah.
that would, like, as far as long-term help, that would be the most ideal situation. And Lee, he's got another year at 7. Who's somebody else? And Palmieri's
He's a
a UFA.
UFA.
So I think you get something for him, and then and Pajot. I think that's a really big break. It's a lot of money off your books, and especially for next season, and the cap's going up. So you're putting yourself in a position to really add if you want to. And that's not to say that maybe Varlamov doesn't come back and he's just on LTIR, and yeah, and his career's
Yeah.
over. I hope not,
Well,
because
I
they've
don't
been
wanna
so
hope
good.
that, yeah.
But he's under $3 million. But you got Hogberg, and he's a UFA after 25, 26, and he's been great. I kind of want him in the NHL. I want him around Sorokin the same way that Sorokin kind of got that treatment.
Yeah.
There's some room here, and they can definitely be interesting next season. They can be players in this off season if they have the room and the cap goes up. I think it's okay that you keep Nelson, but I think the hope is if you don't trade him, he can't walk away. Like on March 8th or whenever the day after the trade deadline is, or even that day,
Yeah.
you want to see him signed, right? If he's going to get signed, fucking sign him. I don't want this kind of getting dragged on, and then that's kind of
You can't
what's
lose him for
been.
nothing. We've
Can't lose him
lost
for
enough
nothing.
players for nothing.
Absolutely. And especially when it hurts when it's your own guy. You can get mad at Ryan Smith all you want. You can get mad at Vanek all you want. They were in Islanders.
Yeah.
As good as they were here. You can fine. It's worse when it's your own guy and they leave. And you just can't seem to make it work when they're on there for life. So
Yeah.
if he's gonna stay, make goddamn sure he's gonna stay.
Yeah. Get
And
him signed.
if there's any question, see ya. Get out of here. I don't think that's the case. I think Nelson really does want to stay. But there's even a little bit of doubt. You just have to do what's right for the team. And if he can get you a ton of assets, then I agree. Get him out of here. But if you can sign him, do it. Any closing thoughts? Because it might be a little bit before we speak again. I might try to get something on the schedule in the next few weeks. But any closing thoughts?
So my closing thoughts are so you know this Islanders roster. You know the players on this roster. But what about the players that aren't on the roster anymore? Do you know where they are now? Does that sound effect work?
It did.
All right. I got three for you. I'm just gonna quiz you. I want to know if you know where they are now.
Okay.
I'll start you off easy. Where's Travis Hamonic?
Oh God. Last night, Ottawa.
Yes, he's on Ottawa. He's played 41 games this year. He has, I think, 3 points. Question number 2. Where is Calvin DeHaan?
Oh my God, he just played the other day, and I was like, that Calvin DeHaan, and he's on Vegas, right?
No, he's on the Avalanche.
Avalanche. I even tweeted that. I was like, DeHaan, Calvin DeHaan. Like, did I hear that right? Like, he's on Colorado.
He's
Yes.
played 38 games for Colorado this year. He has 7 points. So here's the last one. This will determine if you win or lose. You're 1-1. Jack Capuano. Where is he now?
He wasn't he an assistant in Ottawa? I don't remember if he moved on from there. Jack Capuano. Oh, maybe I'm thinking of Ted Nolan. Ooh. That's really tough.
I had to look it up. So
He didn't make his way back to Jack Capuano. No, I think I had Ted Nolan on the brain. I don't think I know where Jack Capuano is.
He is the assistant coach for the Minnesota Wild.
Interesting. And
I
that's
don't remember seeing that. He was with the last I remember was with Ottawa. I didn't see him move to the Wild either.
Did Capuano coach Bill Guerin?
I don't know. I can't remember.
Is that the same era of
I'm trying to get to it as quick as I can.
I can't imagine like Capuano wasn't exactly like I don't know, it wasn't a household name. It wasn't like again, it wasn't like Ted Nolan or somebody else, like one of those Islander coaches that people really wanted around.
What
Trying to
was Bill
think of
Guerin's season with the Islanders? Hold on. I'm gonna have it in 2 seconds once I figure out.
07, 08, and 08,
No,
09.
no. Capuano was in the system. He was doing the AHL then, but his first he started halfway through the 2010-2011 season.
Okay,
So
yeah,
Guerin was gone.
That tracks. Yeah, I'm like, that's such a weird. I mean, I guess it's just the same coaches around and around, but that was
Yeah.
I
So
thought there was a
you lost
connection
it.
there.
I win. You lose.
Oh, okay, good.
I'm going to try to come up with a couple more of these stupid things. Not always going to be where are they now, might be something else, but I'm going to start jumping on you when I get a chance.
No, that's fun. I really did. It's funny that I didn't get the Dehan one because it was like one of those two games. And I like legitimately was surprised to see him on the ice.
If I was quizzing myself, I only would have got Hamonic as well. I had to look up the other. I looked all three of them up to confirm, but Hamonic was the only one I was sure about. Dehan, I didn't know where he ended up, and Capuano, I did not know he was on the Wild.
Hamonic, my initial thought was Vancouver, but I knew he wasn't there now. Like then it quickly was like, okay, he moved on from there. And there was something ridiculous about him being in Ottawa, and I can't remember.
Yeah.
But he bounced around quite a bit. He's played for like
I
3
think he's in the
Canadian
last year of
teams
his
now.
contract.
He must be. And I think it was a pretty good one for him too.
Yeah, but other than quizzing you, just I always like to look at the schedule. We got the Four Nations, which I think actually is going to be fun. I think it's going to be good. But leading into that, we have the Golden Knights. We last beat them 4-0. I don't feel as confident in them for this next one tomorrow. Then they got the Jets. Maybe we'll get lucky and we'll get the backup. We'll get Eric Comrie if we're lucky. And then the next day, a back-to-back with the Wild. So hitting the top of the Central there with those 2 games before the break.
Yeah, it's weird. Like we should have more confidence. And it's weird how that one loss kind of ruins it. But they were going to lose. So I think it's almost good.
Loss. I don't think that loss is what lost my confidence. The injuries really is what is lost my confidence for these games.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think going in, you knew these games were gonna be hard. You're playing top of the every time we talk, I'm always like, they're playing like 6 teams that aren't that good. They should win them all. And this is one where I'm like, wow, they're playing 3 really good teams. I don't know if they could pull it off.
Yeah, it's a good point. The Barzell thing kind of slipped my mind a little bit. Yeah, you're right. It's when it's an uphill climb, they have not proven themselves other than kind of like one-off good games against good teams. It's funny, you flipped me in the beginning of the show and like, oh, actually that winning streak, they had a couple, Carolina, Vegas, Colorado, like they won some good games there. And they just took care of business everywhere else. And you kind of brought me back down to earth here with a bunch of those games in a row and on the road in some instances. So
yeah, no one said it was going to be easy. They dug themselves a hole. This is their time to figure it out. I don't have much confidence, but I'll watch the games. I've been enjoying the couple games that were on Disney Plus, and I don't have to pirate them, or not Disney Plus, whatever, ESPN Plus. I've been watching it on Disney.
We won't do that just so that we don't get in trouble. But we're not condoning anything. But you gotta do what you gotta do. All right. So please rate, review, subscribe wherever you listen or watch the show. You can follow us on Blue Sky and at YouTube at Nassman Hockey. You can also subscribe to NHP the blog on Patreon. I should have been updating this in between episodes, but kind of got caught up finishing my basement and didn't really have the time. You can get the link in the description. Actually, I think, did I mess this up again? It's Substack. It's not Patreon. It's Substack. I need to change that that language, that copy there. I think it's in the description either way. Get them on Substack. Until next time, let's go Islanders.